Hi everybody, my name is Sarah Lambie, and today I'm going to be completing my Module 6 presentation for the legal aspects of policing at IRSC. So today we're going to be talking about the liability issue of the use of force in the criminal justice system. So what does it mean when somebody is liable for something? So when somebody is liable for something, they are legally responsible for their behavior. So civil liability specifically has to do with the legal responsibility to pay for damages caused by that individual's actions. These damages could be personal injury claims, like battery, negligence, and distress, or damage to personal property. So an example of a kind of a liability issue in the criminal justice system would be if a police officer was chasing a suspect who was fleeing, and in that chase, the police officer damaged a fence in somebody's backyard. That police officer and their department could be liable to fix that fence. So the excessive use of force is a huge liability issue in the criminal justice system. While police officers do need to use force in order to safely do their jobs, there's a fine line on what force is considered to be justifiable. So when an officer uses too much force, therein lies the liability issue where a department may have to pay for damages caused by that officer's behavior. So two cases of an excessive force are the Eric Garner and Tamara Rice cases. So Eric Garner was choked to death by a police officer in New York for selling cigarettes illegally, which, definitely does not match the tone of that crime doesn't match the punishment he received from that police officer. And then Tamir Rice was at a park, and an individual called 911 saying he thought he saw somebody who looked like a child holding a gun, and he just couldn't tell if the gun was fake or not. So when the police respond, within under a minute, they shot Tamir Rice dead. So the police didn't really have time to investigate. They didn't talk to Tamir. They just stepped out of the car and shot him because they saw what looked like a black person with a gun. So those two cases are really, really good examples of how a police officer should not act. And these cases also demonstrate a need for change. So the use of force is, again, a very fine line. And when it is used in an excessive manner, it can be very incredibly expensive for a police department to handle that situation. For an example, in Des Moines, they recently settled an excessive force case where they had to pay $800,000 for battery, which is just, thinking about that, it is an insane amount of money for one agency to have to pay, and it really does negatively affect all officers. So what are some possible solutions for this issue, or something to make it a little less bad? So, of course, there needs to be a source of accountability for these officers who do violate that term of excessive force. They have to be handled. Investigations have to be done into these excessive force cases. And they should create policies that strictly define how these investigations should be done and who these investigations should be done by, such as should these investigations be completed by the departments in question, or should they be done by a national agency like the FBI, or who should be in charge of investigating these. And also a standard of what a justifiable use of force needs to be created. It can be very difficult to define, as you know, no statement or situation is going to be exactly the same. But as a human being, we know what's appropriate and what's not when we're handling a situation. And like in the case of Eric Garner, that officer, when he repeatedly hears somebody saying, I can't breathe, should have changed his tactic on how he was apprehending what he considered to be a problem, suspect. It doesn't take a serious law degree to understand that when somebody says they can't breathe, you should change how you move your arm. That is plain and simple too aggressive. However, if somebody's pointing a gun at you, it's a little bit more reasonable to draw your weapon and shoot comparatively to choking somebody to death on the sidewalk because they are slightly aggressive. Additionally, our police force need more training. When you do not have proper training, you do not have the ability to make quick, on-the-spot decisions safely and with everybody's best interest in mind. So the average U.S. officer receives about 19 weeks of training on average. This is incredibly low compared to other countries. Germany, for example, has a minimum of at least 130 weeks of training, which is also why they have less police shootings and, deaths at the hands of police officers. So this increased training allows officers to really develop those techniques that are needed to safely keep individuals in their custody without being excessive in their use of force. So then these are the references used for both what was stated in the video and in the presentation. And that's it. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.